there on the right, and his opponent this round is going to be Chad Williamson. This is going to be Aristocrats Act 2 up against Bant Hexproof.
Now, for those of you who are just joining us, there have been 8 amazing rounds of Standard before this. Make sure that you get involved in the conversation we have online at SCG Live. Gets everybody. We all read that at SCG Live feed, and if you want to get Mox Ruby over here, that's REUBY, Mox
right.
Ruby, and I'm at Adrian L. Sullivan. Remember the hashtag SCG Nash, and that's just for general conversation overall on this event. So, for example, you would already have seen Osip and his amazing gift that he got from Donnie Nolan earlier tonight if you were looking at the hashtag SCG Nash.
Yeah, that was a pretty spectacular token that he got with the, what is it, the Salsa edition?
It's the Salsa edition. Now, that's a fun joke for those of you who know it.
Yeah, that's an excellent play. So, getting to the action, we have John Douglas on the right. He's a Cincinnati area player that I'm pretty familiar with. I've been on a couple of podcasts with him. He's also does some writing. He is lovingly known by the nickname The Executive Producer. Chad Williamson, I am not familiar with, however, he is sporting the Liz Nugent squirrel sleeves, so I can't, it's tied right now, really.
John Douglas with the first action here with Cartel Aristocrat.
No turn 1 Doomed Traveler, as was his plays in the 2 games that he won in his last round on camera a couple of rounds ago. But just the same against Bant Hexproof, Cartel Aristocrat's a fine man. Fine woman, I should say.
And Invisible Stalker from Chad Williamson. John Douglas untaps. Lots of possible action on turn 3 here. Let's see if he has anything. In for 2.
I saw 2 lands and a Sorin. None of that will help with a 3-drop, although...
well, there we go, another Aristocrat. She is a powerful vampire. Land.
Now, in this matchup, I find that if they do not have the turn 3 life gain enchantment, either Gift of Orzhova before Dragon's Maze or Unflinching Courage after, racing with your Cartel Aristocrats, being able to sack off the tokens, avoiding their blockers, actually is a decent play. Because you'll get into a position, right as we see here, where Chad will start playing out value creatures like either Strangleroot Geist, Fencing Ace, or, as you see here, Voice of Resurgence, and you can't sneak past the damage. And racing against Bant Hexproof is never a good proposition because they can always top deck life gain.
After the Voice of Resurgence, a Rancor on Invisible Stalker brings 3 damage to John Douglas. John Douglas now, though, access to a 4th mana, lots of play here, access to Sorin. I don't know if he has a Falcon Wrath Aristocrat in hand, but lots of 4-drops that are very powerful from John Douglas's deck.
Yeah, he also has a Blasphemous Act in hand if another land and another creature enter the battlefield.
Sorin comes down.
I would not be surprised to see an emblem happen here.
Let's see which way he goes. He's thinking about it.
There's the emblem.
It's a birthday cake for Sorin.
That's right. And I think that's the correct play here because he just needs to start getting damage in as quickly as possible. The 1/1 lifelinker is not going to be relevant.
There's the Sorin emblem. Sorin at 1 loyalty, just barely off screen. This makes +1/+0 for all creatures for the rest of this game.
Yeah, he has his very own Orcish Orliflem. Sorin's probably not going to get attacked here either. I would suspect. If the Sorin gets attacked, John Douglas counts that as a win because that means that he's not taking damage.
We see John offering both Aristocrats. Chad happy to block with a Voice and looking for a token.
Is he waiting for the token? I don't know if he's.
He might have missed the token. I'm not sure.
He is waiting for the token. He verbally confirmed to our table judge, waiting for our elemental token. There it is. It's a new addition to our token box, so possibly was hiding.
And we can see 16 to 15 here, the life totals. Chad almost miracling a Geist of St. Traft. Unfortunately, that's not how that card works.
Yeah.
I do like the way that so many people have changed play since how Miracles were printed. Looking at every card.
Now, an interesting thing here is if Chad chooses to not attack the Sorin, then John can play a land, make a token, and play Blasphemous Act. However, that is not what ended up happening. Sorin goes away. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Can he still play the Blasphemous Act? I think he can. So if he plays a land here, he'll be able to wrath away everything on the board.
Yeah. And he does have an untapped land.
There's the basic planes.
I mean, I still feel like I might just attack with that Aristocrat, presuming that the Geist will not block it.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Yep, and there it is. 14, and then Blasphemous Act afterwards.
Yeah, almost certainly has to
Actually,
play this Blasphemous Act.
3 damage, not 14, so that would knock him to 13.
Right.
And then the Act clears the table.
Getting rid of everybody, leaving John with 3 in hand and Chad with also 3. However, he doesn't have anything to attach to the Rancor that he brought back from earlier in the game.
Pretty sure that life total is off by 1, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Remember that there was a emblem token out, so that was 3 damage that hit from John Douglas's Cartel Aristocrat.
Right. There it is.
And he says, pass, no creatures.
Yep, and that's one of the dangers of the Bant Hexproof deck is that there's just so few creatures in the deck.
Look at that. So excited to have drawn one of the very few creatures left.
Yeah, and there it is. This is going to get some pants. John Douglas's deck also not exactly heavy on creatures. He has 22 to Chad Williamson's 20.
If you were at the following table,
I saw this happen several times at the Invitational, in fact, when Aristocrats would establish control of the board, put his opponent on top decking, and still lose because of how awkward the draws were. The Aristocrats is a deck that 7-card hands don't really look great, but 10-card hands look amazing because all of the synergies work so well together. But when you're in top deck mode after having to use Blasphemous Act as a Wrath of God, sometimes it's just not your day.
John Douglas now being attacked for 3, so it would put him down to 9. In hand, Chad Williamson with a Simic Charm, and John Douglas with 2, count 'em, 2 Tragic Slips.
Yeah. Not where you want to be when you're the Aristocrats having targeted elimination against the Bant
Ooh,
Hexproof deck.
Lingering Souls? Is that what that was?
That
Nope. Doom Traveler.
Is not exactly where you want to be either, although that is a 2/1 for 1 mana. That also makes another 2/1. It's a Penumbra Bobcat.
Penumbra Bobcat. Awesome reference there. Good card.
Yeah, I like that card. So we have another attack from the 3/1 unblockable. I'm just not even going to say trample at any point anymore. That's going to drop John down 3 more life points. He's on a very short clock.
Ooh, that was a nice pull for him. The Blood Artist, while only an 0/1, can at least do some math for him, and potentially, well, it's a 1/1 with the token. That was a Blood Artist, wasn't it?
I don't think it was. I think it was another Tragic Slip.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, drawing 3 Tragic Slips of the 4 in his deck.
Oh,
This is
and he could potentially pump it, and he does.
And that will be that. John
With-
Douglas did not draw well at the end there after trying to establish control.
Slip, slip, slip.
Yep.
Does not do much against a untargetable creature, or I should say a hexproof creature.
Right. And so John Douglas is down a game to Chad Williamson. We'll take a look at Chad's sideboard here. One of the things I liked about, or didn't like about previous iterations, the last couple weeks of the Bant Hexproof deck was the sideboard. I really didn't like their sideboards from even the top 8 versions. And
Why is that?
I don't know. A lot of the cards were I just didn't like. Things like 3 mana counterspells, basically all of the 3 mana counterspells, be they Dissipate or Render Silent, were not particularly good. It just seemed like a lot of the cards were just very awkward and not where you wanted to be. Chad has a couple of cards that I do like. Ground Seal appears to be the card of Graveyard Hate that you play when you're in Bant Hexproof these days, because it replaces itself even if you're not even if it's not great against things like Junk Reanimator, where they can just play things from their hand instead. At least it replaces itself, and it's also an enchantment which will help pump up Ethereal Armor. He also has 4 Strangleroot Geist in his sideboard. Being able to go up to 4 Strangleroot Geist and 4 Voice of Resurgence against decks that have Liliana of the Veil particularly is very good. But even Chad's sideboard I'm not a huge fan of. He's got near-hearth pilgrims to be able to help in race situations, and from there it's just sort of a hodgepodge of things. In this particular matchup, I would anticipate Selesnya Charm coming in as a way to take down 5-2 Falkenrath aristocrats, or be able to throw in surprise blockers, be able to another way to pump things. So that's a pretty common one. I also anticipate these negates coming in to be able to deal with Sorens and Blasphemous Acts.
From John Douglas, the number one card I see in his sideboard that sticks out is Electrickery.
Yeah.
Electrickery, just being able to take out in response to some kind of pants on a Invisible Stalker, that play all on itself, the overloaded Electrickery, is so worth it. But then besides that, you can always be super lucky and potentially get even more value. We saw Jeff Hoogland, for example, try to make the play taking out 2 Invisible Stalkers plus a enchantment, and it didn't end up working simply because his opponent had a negate at the time.
Yep.
But, I mean, that kind of interaction is ridiculously powerful.
Absolutely. I would also anticipate Vampire Nighthawk coming in for John Douglas.
Absolutely. That little bit of lifelink, there's a reason it's powerful in the form of Unflinching Courage. And John Douglas, a Vampire Nighthawk doing it is not quite as powerful, but it's still pretty darn good, particularly since there's only one unblockable creature in Chad Williamson's deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Vampire Nighthawk being able to stand in front of spectral flighted creatures or being able to race against Invisible Stalkers, both very relevant.
Yeah, and I mean, that's not even to talk about the opportunity for a Nighthawk to stay on the table unopposed for 2 or 3 turns before having to turn into a defensive creature.
Yes.
Like, right there, if you've ever had the Vampire Nighthawk gain you 4, maybe 6 life, and then turn into a defender, it's a pretty good situation. That little buffer on the life total really can matter.
Yeah, John is going to be taking out everything that says target creature. So Tragic Slips and Orzhov Charms are going to be coming out. I think that the Sorens are going to stay in. I think they're fine. They're not at their best in this matchup, certainly, but I think that they can stay. So what we're looking at in John's sideboard is you bring in the 2 Electrickeries and the 3 Vampire Nighthawks for the 5 targeted elimination spells. Over on Chad's side, I would anticipate he would be bringing in negates to be able to deal with.
I like a negate.
Future spells like Electrickery, and also the Blasphemous Axe and the Sorens, so he'll bring in the pair of those. I don't believe he's going to bring in this Nevermore. It seems pretty lackluster here. I would anticipate he would instead bring in possibly Selesnya Charm, possibly Feeling of Dread. These are pretty mediocre cards to be bringing in this matchup. So I think that the negates coming in possibly for just the Simic Charms would be my choice.
And Chad Williamson, we have a little mention on Twitter from @Sidonix. Chad is a Chattanooga player.
Okay.
So if you're a Chattanooga area player, or if you're from that region, you've got somebody to root for here.
Yeah. So we saw John Douglas once again, no turn 1 play. Chad, on the other hand, does have a turn 1 play. He has Avacyn's Pilgrim, one of the best human monks printed. Possibly not as good as Sin Collector, but close. And John Douglas follows it up with a Cartel Aristocrat.
Okay, the turn 2 Smiter, excellent
really
turn 2 play.
Gonna put a break on the Electrickery plan. Now that we probably don't have much targeted elimination, bringing in the 4/4 for 3 mana, certainly good enough.
And we see a Blood Artist come down. Blood Artist in this matchup can do a surprising amount of sucking up of life and switching the match around. I mean, I've seen people attacking with Thundermaw Hellkites. This is not this matchup, obviously. Thundermaw Hellkites and other huge creatures, and having a Blood Artist actually racing.
Wow, look at this. So we have Spectral Flight and Ethereal Armor on the big elephant. And he's going to deal 8 damage to Mr. John Douglas. John has a Blasphemous Act in his hand. He also has another Boros Reckoner, or not Boros Reckoner, Blood Artist. And so he's going to need to find a way to survive until the point where he can cast that Blasphemous Act. And I think that he is not there yet.
I mean, I could see him laying another Blood Artist.
I think another Blood Artist
taking a huge hit from the elephant, and then if the Blasphemous Act on the following turn is not countered.
Being in pretty good
He's in
shape.
pretty good shape.
Yeah, his opponent has 3 lands, it looks like. Possibly 2. So we got a pair of Blood Artists. Looks like this Loxodon Smiter is going to be able to take John down to 4. So
And
Electrickery on Avacyn's Pilgrim is a little bit curious to me.
he gains 2 life from it.
Ah, okay.
Does do 2 damage to his opponent, but it does also mean that the Blasphemous Act is a little bit harder to cast. I mean, does he have a land in his hand? He can cast
he
it
does have a land in his hand. I think he's anticipating Chad playing another land or creature as well to be able to get more value. What he doesn't know is, turns out, Chad's just mana flooded. So 2 Blood Artists in play, possibly going to be able to pull John out of this hole that he's currently in.
Tragic Slip in hand.
Aha,
Oh,
I see. So
boom.
Never mind. We didn't
Doesn't
even
even
need
have to wait.
So we kept in the Tragic Slips. I think that's a good choice anyway because these decks tend to run things like Avacyn's Pilgrim, of course, on turn 1 to be able to slow them down. Loxodon Smiter, even being able to take out a Voice of Resurgence before it can cause too much damage. These decks used to run things like Fencing Ace, and by used to, I mean even 2 weeks ago, we saw a top 8 list that had Fencing Ace, so keeping in the Tragic Slip is certainly fine. Chad top decking an Aura, not going to do it.
Cartel Aristocrat coming in once again, and wow, we see the Reckoner, and Blasphemous Act at this stage in the game is going to be enough to kill Chad Williamson.
Yep. John's going to untap and show his opponent that he has the combo. Almost certainly here. I wouldn't even risk attacking, facing down something like an Azorius Charm.
I mean, I don't even know that I would do the combo right now. A Simic Charm in response would be devastating.
Oh, bouncing the Boros Reckoner? Sure.
And actually, would he still be dead? He would still be dead, though, honestly,
Yeah.
even with a Simic Charm. So a negate. Yeah, never mind. Because of the 2 Blood Artists, the Blood Artists themselves would take care of it.
Oh, okay. So he doesn't even need to show the
Yep.
Blasphemous Act.
And then John Douglas sacrifices to the Cartel Aristocrat, a suck there for 2, and he'd be able to finish him off then by eating the other Blood Artist for another 2, putting Chad down to -1.
Yep.
Chad and John shuffling up for our game 3 here. Now, having seen that John is keeping in the targeted removal, I am kind of curious if he maybe just brought in the 2 Electrickeries and stopped and said right there and that he's done.
Yeah, I guess so. I think that the Nighthawks must have not come in, and we kept in a couple of Tragic Slips to be able to deal with the quick starts from Avacyn's Pilgrim, prevent the turn 3 Geist of St. Traft play.
I mean, if you kill a turn 1 Avacyn's Pilgrim, that's not bad.
Yeah, certainly.
And there are a lot of creatures that do not have hexproof that you can kill. So there is a use for them. We saw him there use it to take down an 8/8.
Absolutely.
So Tragic
yeah.
Slip
We
killing an
say-
8/8 is not terrible.
We call this deck Bant Hexproof, but really, there's only Geist of St. Traft and Invisible Stalker. I mean, we also have Simic Charm to be able to grant a little bit of hexproof, but there's only those 2 cards in the deck. So being able to take out every other creature in the deck, even Voice of Resurgence, which isn't ideal, you can set up with all of the sacrifice triggers in John Douglas's deck, being able to take down Loxodon Smiters. If Chad has to go all in on a non-hexproof creature, it can certainly be very good.
Now, one of the things I definitely have seen play in the last week or 2 is a kind of cousin to Aristocrats, essentially turning into a aggro junk list with Voice of Resurgence as one of the pieces of the deck. And I'm not sure how good that deck is. I know that there were 5 very good players that took it down to Chicago, and they were all 2 losses by the round 4.
Yeah, I was talking about this with Osu, that I think that there is a deck there where instead of Falconwrath Aristocrat, you run Varls, and instead, you just have another Strangleroot Geist, 2 creatures for the price of 1, Doomed Traveler kind of creature in Voice of Resurgence. It's obviously a much better Doomed Traveler, but very similar in terms of being able to have a presence on the board after Wrath of God or a sacrifice effect. So there's certainly a deck there. The problem is that there's been so much work put into the Aristocrats, both before the Pro Tour and now with the Act 2 variant after the Pro Tour. there just aren't as many people trying to make the junk version work.
Yeah.
And so it'll take a little bit longer to get there.
I mean, I actually don't know that it will ever get there because of one major thing. I think that not having Blasphemous Act is a big deal. I mean, I see so many moments where the combo part of it, where your opponent's tapped out and you drop a Boros Reckoner and then kill them right away from out of nowhere.
And that's the real innovation. At the Pro Tour, it was a much less focused deck, the Aristocrats was, because you had things like Champion of the Parish, which fit into an aggressive strategy and was very good at that event. But in terms of having a synergistic deck, the Aristocrats Act 2 variant is so much more together. You just have this engine that can be unstoppable when you get to a certain board state.
Not an exciting start here for Chad Williamson. On turn 2, no creature. John Douglas has to be happy with that. His deck is a bit of a slower deck in this matchup.
Well, I don't know how happy John Douglas is, because if you don't see a turn 2 creature, you can pretty much guarantee that your opponent has a Geist of St. Traft. And so you can pretty much guarantee that he's got Geist in hand, there it is, and at least one aura that either gives it some sort of evasion, either Unflinching Courage or Spectral Flight. I wouldn't have kept any other hand. And as you see,
that's
both.
Exactly the hand. Now, I feel like one of the reasons why I view that as a better start for the Aristocrats, though, is that it didn't happen on turn 2.
Sure.
There wasn't, something scary happen, and then we'll look at that Nighthawk.
There you go. Now we have our Nighthawk in play. Let's bring up Vampire Nighthawk. I think that it's worth taking another look at.
I mean, for you Zendikar sealed deck players, you might realize that there was an incredible correlation between Vampire Nighthawk and success.
Yes. If you open Vampire Nighthawk, the percentage of you winning that draft, if you played it in your deck, I should say, was very high. And now being an M13, basically a tiny Baneslayer Angel having 3 abilities for 3 mana, Cavern naming Vampire to be able to cast that Vampire Nighthawk. Very relevant.
Oh, wow.
Here.
He comes on in. Basically, I think based on the back of having another Geist in his hand.
Yes.
And this is going to be a 4 trample, so that's going to be 1 over plus 4 is 5 damage. John gains 2 life, so it's going to be a net loss of 3 life for John Douglas.
And of course, we see Unflinching Courage there. The updated Armadillo Cloak here in Dragon's Maze.
I mean, Unflinching Courage is actually a card that I think we'll see Modern play. If you remember in Extended, and I mean actual Extended, Armadillo Cloak was a real player, so this is a card I would be unsurprised to see making the translation to Modern.
Absolutely. I had a friend of mine from Athens, Ohio, who was working on a Tallowisp deck, if you recall back in the day. Things like Armadillo Cloak would be able to be triggered off of Chameleon Colossus and put things on of Troll Ascetic. This was a very old deck that I think Rashawn Miller actually was championing for a while. And now that we have an Armadillo Cloak again in the format, I would not be surprised to see Tallowisp returning to the top tables. I don't think we're going to bring that one up for you because it's not in play here, but that's a good one to go look up on Gatherer or on StarCityGames.com. Very relevant Magic card. So, John Douglas and Chad
I think they're discussing the Blood Artist.
I think they're discussing what the life totals are. We currently have them at 22 to 17. Chad does have another Geist in his hand. He also has a Loxodon Smiter.
Lingering Souls, 2 more creatures in play for the Blood Artist.
Lingering Souls lost a lot of value with the printing of Unflinching Courage. This deck got a lot better. It also replaced Gift of Orzhova, which was basically +1/+1 and lifelink against this deck. Now, getting the additional pump and gaining trample is so much more relevant so decks that use Lingering Souls like this and Junk Reanimator. You've noticed Junk Reanimator has completely eschewed that card.
In hand, I see Electrickery. I think I saw a Boros Reckoner. There it is, Boros Reckoner.
Boros Reckoner, John might think is a good enough defensive play here. Unfortunately for him, Chad has both Rancor and Spectral Flight in hand to be able to suit up that Geist with a couple pairs of pants.
We see him drop a 5th land, and I think we might see Reckoner plus Lingering Souls. There's the Lingering Souls portion of things.
Lingering Souls. We can also see a Cartel Aristocrat here to try and get things going. Yep,
Oh, that's where he's going. He's going with the Cartel Aristocrat.
And
Now-
he's leaving up the Electrickery mana, just in case something like Avacyn's Pilgrim or Fencing Ace comes into play on Chad's turn.
Now, Chad Williamson's version of this list is not running the Fencing Ace, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other things that can be hit by it, or that John Douglas even knows exactly what Chad Williamson's playing. Loxodon Smiter is usually a good indication that there's not the Fencing Ace, but some decks do run both.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in a format that's very Jund heavy, having main deck Loxodon Smiters doesn't really tell you anything, so having both is certainly reasonable, especially the more recent versions that had been running the Fencing Ace. I've never personally been a fan of the Fencing Aces in these decks.
I feel like it's a little too fragile, but I mean, obviously it has seen good successes in the past.
Oh, absolutely. What do I know?
Spectral Flight plus Rancor.
So
Plus Rancor.
plus
Ouch!
Rancor. That is a large spirit folk there. That is a whole mess of damage.
Okay.
So that's an 8/4 that also attacks 8/4 trample flying that hexproof that also attacks with a 4/4 flying.
And I think we're going to see an Angel blocked here by this Spirit.
Yep. So we're going to take 8, go to 7, then gain 1, going to 8. Chad will go to 17.
And I think actually earlier, the Blood Artist question mark, I think what happened was John did not take the drain for 2. I think there were two dead creatures and he did not drain for 2. I mean, and it's funny because 9 is so much more than 7 in this situation.
So John, I believe, is he at 7? Is that correct life total?
That is correct.
All right.
And we see, oh my goodness,
Another
that's a
Blood
second
Artist.
Blood Artist and a Lingering Souls. He's actually getting to the point where he can practically Disciple of the Vault Ravager his opponent out.
Yeah, he also has Boros Reckoner in his hand.
The actual life total is 8.
Sorry, yeah, okay, so we went to 8. We gained a life. So now we can play Boros, or we can play Lingering Souls, just to add more animals to the board. And I think we're going to play another Blood Artist.
Ouch.
And that's going to be 2, 4, 6, 8,
Take 2.
10,
Take 4.
12.
That is it.
So he took the 5 on the attacks to drop him to 7. Was he at 17 or was he at 12? I think he was at 12. He went to 17 or 12, Troy? 12. So he did go to 12. John Douglas then played out some more tokens, was able to play a second Blood Artist, and have plenty of creatures to be able to drop him from there.
He could actually deal 13 damage with his Blood Artist, Cartel Aristocrat, and 5 Spirits.
Yes. And so he was able to drain him out for the last final amount of damage, pretty much out of nowhere, which is something that deck can do. Also showcasing the power of Lingering Souls. Hey, 4 bodies on 1 card, both if you cast both halves.
Yeah. Now,
nothing to sneeze at.
Chad, I think, had to feel like he was in pretty good shape there. Obviously, it is possible for a deck like the Aristocrats to be able to get that very swingy life total situation, but that is a lot of damage practically out of nowhere.
Yep. So it looks like executive producer John Douglas is going to be able to draw the next round to get into top 8.